Hello Internet, Seth Skorikowski, and today we're going to begin a little journey. Now, normally I do my tabletop module reviews discussing what's just inside the scenario itself, rather than talking about what my group's particular adventures were while we played the scenario. The big exception to that was when we did the Two-Headed Serpent campaign for Pulp Cthulhu as a campaign diary, following a team of plucky heroes through the various chapters. A review with a story that doesn't just show the scenario itself, but demonstrates what the game is like and how game masters and players might respond to the various things inside the scenario. So today we're going to start a review / game diary / war stories about the Traveler mini-campaign, The Mystery of BT-SHT 365. Written by Christopher Wilson and released in 2018, the adventure is published through the Traveler's Aid Society program, where authors release self-published adventures similar to the programs out there like DM's Guild or the Miskatonic Repository. Coming in at 50 pages, the adventure is broken into 4 acts, each act taking about 1 session to play. Act 2, I believe, should have been split into 2 acts itself, so the whole thing really should have been 5 acts, but game masters should expect this scenario to play out in 4 to 5 regular length sessions. Now, I have reviewed self-published scenarios before, and some of them out there are extremely good, but there are several pitfalls that self-published scenarios can fall into, and unfortunately, this scenario falls into a lot of them. The art is the free generic art that Mongoose Publishing offers, which is black and white and not tailored for the adventure itself. The story layout is weird, and there's no page numbers in it, which isn't a problem if you're just reading it off of the PDF, but if you try to print it off like I did and add little notes in the margins, the lack of page numbers is kind of a bother. The backstory and the villain motivations really aren't explained. The plot relies on several assumptions of what the player characters will do once they encounter certain situations, and doesn't really offer any contingencies of what a game master might do if the player characters do not follow this intended path. Also, I really don't like the name of the scenario. Aside from being just a huge mouthful, it's, well,
just go ahead and say it. It sounds like batshit 365, which is what our group calls it now.
So there is a lot that I can and I will complain about. But it also has a lot that's going for it. We have this huge multi-part adventure that takes us to several worlds, a bank heist, a conspiracy, killer robots, a lost planet, wonderful, wonderful action, and some great role-playing possibilities. And it also pays an homage to many of my favorite movies and TV shows out there. So in short, despite its flaws, this game hooked me. As of right now, we've completed Acts 1 through 3, and that's taken us about 25 hours worth of playtime in order to do that much. I expect that we're going to complete Act 4 later on this month, but today's episode is only going to cover Act 1, the bank heist, which is the first 10 pages of the scenario. So what I'm going to do is offer my criticisms and my suggestions as a game master who has completed this act of the scenario.
And I'm Jack the NPC. I'm going to be giving this one to you from a player's side of things, as well as my usual peanut gallery humor.
And since we're doing this one as a campaign diary, let's meet our heroes. The Traveler crew consists of Ignis, captain and pilot; Grista, co-pilot and former pirate who arranges their less-than-legal jobs; Jax, former Marine, now communications and security officer, as well as the ship's medic; Moto, former scout and barbarian raider with a troubled past. He handles the ship's sensors. And finally Vince, celebrity rock star serving as the ship's steward and gunner. Their ship is the Cygnus Crucible, a not so gently used 200-ton free trader that Ignis owns a major stake in. The ship features a med bay, luxury suite, secret cargo compartment, improved jump drive, and a single double laser turret. The crew had already experienced 2 adventures together. One of those adventures led to a massive payday, and the other was a complete bust. But before we can begin today's adventure, I must warn you that there will be spoilers. So any players out there, please stop now, but send your game masters this way to see if this adventure would be a good fit for your group. Okay, Game Masters, let's get this thing started. The scenario begins in the Sindal subsector of the Trojan Reach. The PCs are contacted by a shady broker named Anison James, who represents one of the crime lords from the pirate planet of Thieves. He tells them that he has a job offer and asks them to meet him on the planet of Homestead. The module suggests several planets that the travelers might be on at the time the offer arrives. If they don't have their own ship, Varuk will offer them passage to Homestead, and the meeting should take place in 8 weeks' time. If the travelers do have their own ship, like our crew does, they can make their own way there. Now, our group also started off on the planet of Marduk, which is 7 parsecs away.
Yeah, fuel and maintenance fees cost money. So unless you can quote us a price that you're willing to pay, I can't see any reason why we should go.
So I decided that instead of just sending him off to Homestead with the promise that there will be money involved at some point, Varuk initially offered them a smaller job, sort of a tester job. And the travelers were to carry 2 tons of secret cargo from Marduk to Homestead, with directions that once they were there, it might lead him to another job in the future. Grista, a former pirate who would love to get in with the thief crime boss, readily agreed. The travelers picked up some regular cargo, some passengers, and before leaving the Marduk system, met a different group of shady travelers and picked up 2 tons of special cargo that they then stored in their secret hold. And with that done, they jumped to Thief. Now, this part of the adventure should have gone off without any sort of hitch at all. But this is a tabletop role-playing game. They live off of hitches, and this particular hitch deals with backstory. A couple adventures prior, a character from Vince's past, a Chaz Thurgood VIII, offered the travelers a job that ended up going south. Now, Chaz is very rich, and using the affinity-enmity charts from the Traveler Companion, Chaz has an affinity of 3 toward Vince, positively inclined. However, he also has an enmity of 3, being simultaneously negatively inclined.
Meaning that Chaz is a super rich frenemy. He's got your back, but don't turn it on him because he's gonna jam a knife into it.
So Chaz hires him for this job, and the job goes south. It was no fault of the travelers, and it was no fault of Chaz, but Chaz didn't want to pay them for this job that didn't work out. The travelers didn't like that. They wanted to be paid. Things were said, one thing led to another, and eventually the travelers shoved Chaz into an airlock and threatened to space him if he didn't pay up. So Chaz decided to pay up. But the incident left a very bad taste in his mouth, and it was enough to move his enmity from a 3 to a 4. Hatred. Chaz wanted payback. So my plan was that the next time the travelers were going to be taking on a big group of passengers, one of them would really be an agent that had been sent by Chaz, and that agent was going to set up a remote-controlled explosive device aboard the traveler's ship. Now, the device was going to send out a ping every time the travelers exited jump space, alerting anybody that was in that particular system that the travelers had arrived and where they were. Now, the sensor operator aboard the ship might notice this ping. It's a difficult role, but they might notice it, but they won't know exactly where it's coming from. It'd require that they do a very thorough scouring of the ship to figure out where all these strange pings are coming from, and they might not be able to discover it at all. The idea was that the device was going to be hidden away for several sessions, sending out these random pings. Sometimes they get noticed, sometimes they don't, but eventually the travelers were going to be confronted by another ship that Chaz had sent. And if the travelers had not discovered this device that was hidden aboard this ship, if the travelers tried to flee the situation with the other ship, the other captain was going to hit the button on the remote control, the bomb would explode and disable the Cygnus Crucible's engines. This was meant to be a slow burn plot, at least that's how I intended it to go, but on the 3rd night when the travelers were in jump space, the agent made his move. There was a slight, almost 0 chance of him getting caught, but it was enough that it should warrant a few rolls. Using the optional luck rules from the Traveler Companion, I had the players roll to see if they were awake at that late hour, and remarkably 3 of them were. I decided that they were up in the crew common area playing a late-night game of cards. Now, because the agent was so quiet, the travelers probably weren't even going to hear him, but Ignis made his rolls and he heard something. Worried that they might have a stowaway or something weird might be going on with the secret cargo they were transporting, the travelers searched the ship. They verified that all the passengers were safely in the rooms that they should have been, and they were about to write off the whole incident as being some sort of fluke detail, something they might want to remember later on. It was at that time that Jax made a killer computer roll, and Jax noticed that somebody had messed with the ship's security systems and left a 20-minute window, in which case that was when the sound was heard, and somebody had then tried to go in and cover it up. So the travelers knew that someone on board was doing something shady. So they scoured the ship again, they found the bomb this time, they searched the passenger rooms, and they discovered who the agent was. It was a charming man that they all enjoyed, whose name was Jerry. Now Jerry spilled the beans, told him everything that was going on, and some of the crew wanted to kill him now that they found him, but Grista said,
"Look guys, it wasn't personal, just a job. We don't need to kill him. Chaz is the real enemy. Jerry is a great guy."
After much debate, they decided that they should just go ahead and freeze Jerry in a low berth freezer and figure out what to do with him later on. The only problem is that all of their low berths were currently occupied by other passengers.
So we woke one of them up and told him that they'd won a contest and been upgraded to a free private room. And that guy was so happy, he was all like, "Oh my God, I've never won anything before. I'm gonna leave this on your Yelp review." And then the moment that he had left and had moved into Jerry's old room, we took Jerry and we jammed him into that empty freezer. Teresa.
Aside from a brief episode of getting stopped and having people search their ship and not find anything for some sort of strange contraband that they were looking for, the next few weeks were pretty uneventful, jumping from Thebes to number 1 and then on to Salif. On Salif, they decided to stop for a while, enjoy the benefits of a Class A starport, and spend some of that money that they'd been amassing. Ignis immediately went to work on the ship, repairing some of its old quirks and also upgrading it with some repair drones. Grista and Jack searched for high-tech toys on the black market. Grista got subdermal armor, and in retrospect, I should have given her some sort of short-term mange, a little bit of patchiness to her fur for a little while till the fur grew back, but I didn't think about that till later on, but I'll remember that next time in the future. Jack's upgraded himself to cybernetic eyes. He also scored a super sweet laser rifle with automatic fire, which is now his very favorite gun. Vince put on a killer rock show and met some record executives who thought a rock star turned traveler sounded like a great reality show. He agreed, so Vince now has several camera drones that follow him around, recording all of his awesome adventures. Torn by all the trauma and regret of his time as a raider, Moto got blind stinking drunk and joined several fighting matches. Not to win, but to get his ass kicked, which it was. Then he stumbled aboard the ship and drunkenly confessed all of his sins to the one man that he could trust with them.
I can tell you anything, Sherry. You don't judge me. You just listen. You are my best friend. I love you. I love you so much.
Eventually, the travelers left Salif for their final destination of Homestead, where our adventure finally begins.
Begins? Dude, that was a 4.5-hour game that you just summarized right there. We are deep into this adventure.
Actually, we're only half a page into the scenario. Because this is a Traveler game, a Traveler is a game that is about the journey just as much, if not more, than the destination. I figured it'd be kind of fun to show what the journey inside of a Traveler game can be like. Homestead is a pretty primitive planet, sort of the Old West with a single open-air starport. Now, Game Masters, if your group does not have their own ship, and if they flew here because Annis and James flew them here, if they ask while they're at the starport, have them notice a far trader there that's named the Shenanigans. This is going to serve as a foreshadowing for later on in Act 2, but the module doesn't mention this, and you should probably throw in a little bit of foreshadowing while you can. Now, in the generic bar and grill, they meet with Annis and James. Now, since I had the Travelers do a job for Anison beforehand, he initially met them at the ship, and some of his men picked up the cargo and carried it off, and then Anison was all like, "Hey guys, that was a good job. Why don't you follow me on over to the generic bar and grill, and I have a second job for you." Now, this new job is a bank heist. Anison explains that the General Development Corporation operates several mines on Homestead, and once a month their payrolls all come through a bank in the small town of Benyamin. The Travelers are to take the Maglev train there. It's 1,000 kilometers away, about a 5-hour ride. They're to steal the payroll crate, meet Anison at a pickup spot about 5 kilometers outside of town. Now, the Travelers' cut for all of this is 30%, but they can easily negotiate that up to 40%. But if anyone is killed during the course of the robbery, that pay is then reduced by 10%, so the Travelers should hopefully not hurt anybody while they're doing it.
Okay, a bank robbery plan definitely has my interest. I am a huge Firefly fan, and that fits in with that. But I got a few questions.
While the module does answer some of the various questions that the Travelers might ask, one of the big questions that it never answers is what makes this payroll so special. After all, just getting the Travelers here took weeks. It said 8 to 10 weeks, and if it's a monthly payroll, that means it's 2 to 3 payrolls have happened during that time. And it's possibly cost thousands of credits just to get the Travelers here. So what makes this payroll more important than all the others before it? So my suggestion is just go ahead and change Anison's story. Anison says that the payroll is normally 50,000 credits, which that's what the payroll is, but this one is going to be different. Normally the payroll is aboard a single crate. However, this one, they found out, is going to be 4 crates. Now, Anison doesn't know what's going to be in those other crates, but all he knows is that his boss wants the contents of them, and that's good enough for him. So I had him offer the Travelers 20,000 credits per crate, with a 10% penalty if anyone was injured or killed during the course of the robbery. Now, the Travelers, of course, could negotiate that up to 25,000 credits per crate, but Grista said,
"Not a problem. Anything that we can do to get in good with your boss is fine by us. Come on, boys. We got a bank to rob."
Instead of opting to take the 5-hour train ride into town, the travelers own a helicopter, which is what they use to get to Binyamin. For this, the module provides an incredibly crude map, and I'm kind of amazed at how bad this map looks. And while, yeah, we get some great detail about the 8 buildings here and the residents, I love the Church of Palor. It seems a little bit too small for the scenario, so I decided to double the size of the town. I added a hotel, a doctor's office, that sort of thing. Now, another big thing that I changed is that every month, when the minor payrolls all come in, people from all over show up in town and they start setting up this little tent city. And it becomes a bazaar or a fair where people sell produce and livestock, merchandise, dancing, and anything that can separate these miners from their brand new money. So in the days leading up to payday, which is what they call this monthly event, more and more tents and booths start cropping up. And buildings 15 and 16 are giant permanent pavilions with more booths inside of them. Now, the module gives personalities for a lot of the NPCs in the town. In fact, most of this act is just NPC personality profiles. The player characters in my game didn't really interact with them.
Interact? No way. We came to this town in order to stake it out, and we already made a pretty grand entrance by flying in here with our own private helicopter. Which probably wasn't the best plan when you're trying not to draw too much attention to yourself in a dinky little tech level 3 town.
How the travelers go about doing the heist is completely up to them. Maybe they'll sneak in at night and do it as kind of a stealth job, or maybe they'll just kick open the door in the middle of the day and do a daring robbery. Now, one thing that I do want to mention is that the player characters, while they are checking out this town and they're interacting with all the different colorful characters here, have them not actually necessarily meet, but definitely see Coraline Petrovsky. The module doesn't mention her until Act 2, and she's a major character throughout the course of the campaign, but she's supposed to be in this little hick town at the same time the travelers are, and like the travelers themselves, she should really stick out. Now, Coraline knows that somebody has been following her ever since she started looking for her family's missing planet, but she doesn't know who has been following her, so she's probably going to notice the travelers, see that they obviously stick out and they probably shouldn't be in this town, and she's going to take special notice of them and probably try to avoid any places they're in. So the travelers might get glimpses of her through a window, or they might walk into the restaurant and, Coraline kind of quickly makes her escape from that situation. But it should be somebody that the travelers see, and maybe they start kind of wondering what she's up to. At the same time, she's wondering what they're up to. And that way, when she shows up in Act 2, it's not like some sort of random thing that gets tacked on. This is somebody that they had noticed before. However, my group didn't stay in town that long. They just basically showed up, checked out the bank, and then quickly left it again. Knowing that they needed to act fast because there were all these people that were showing up more and more before the big payday event, the heroes flew their helicopter about 3 to 4 kilometers outside of town, landed it, and walked back under the cover of night. Jax and Ignis disabled the bank's security system, and while there aren't that many motor vehicles that are in the town, Ignis ended up hotwiring the bank manager's personal car, which is the equivalent of a Homestead 1997 Toyota 4Runner. Moto ran distraction. He made his way behind the pavilions where the vendors had set up, and then on cue he started a fire using a flare gun. As everyone rushed off to deal with the sudden fire that could potentially destroy the town, the rest of the party broke into the bank and entered the vault. They quickly located the cases, but only one of them looked like the payroll strongbox that had been described to them. The 2 others were kind of squarish, and then the other was a large flat case, sort of like a locking portfolio case that an artist might use. Now, the module assumes that the travelers are going to open up the case, or case is in my case since I actually used 4 of them, and that they're going to see the ancient star map inside, and that's going to push the game further in the further chapters. However, for my game...
So you think we should open these and see what's inside of them? Our job is to steal them, not look at them. Now come on, let's get out of here. Whatever happens, don't look inside.
As the heroes were about to exit the bank and Moto is making his way back around to the truck, a ship's launch drops out of the sky and the doors open, and all of a sudden Augmen raiders start rappelling down into the town. And then there's the roar of engines as vehicles come in from all sides as the travelers find themselves in the dead middle of an Augmen raid.
Holy crap, raiders are attacking the town! It's just like in that Joss Whedon movie.
Augmen raiders capture slaves and technology. That's the big thing that they want. So when Jax decided to open fire on them using his automatic laser rifle, he suddenly became really popular. What followed was an amazing chase through the nighttime desert, the travelers in their 20-year-old crappy stolen SUV and the raiders on grav bikes hot on their trail. Once the travelers had shot down the last of them and the raiders' grav bike exploded in a big fiery ball, the travelers had made it back to their helicopter, and that's when a desperate call came in over the radio. The sheriff of Binyamin was radioing in, saying he didn't care what the travelers stole, they could keep it as far as he was concerned. But the raiders had taken several of the townspeople hostage, including his 14-year-old daughter, and that there was no one else on this crappy little planet that could possibly save him, and even if there was no way that anybody could get there in time before the raiders left the planet. So he was begging that the travelers come back and help him get his daughter back. This moment is going to be the hardest moment in the entire campaign for you to run. The town really can't pay them. The only money that the town had, the travelers just stole. But the travelers then have to choose to help the townspeople get their residents back, including the sheriff's daughter. If they decide not to help the townspeople out, then the game just ends right there. Hopefully they had fun doing the bank heist. So the trick that a game master needs to do if they want to continue the rest of the adventure is to come up with a way for the travelers to want to take this job without railroading or forcing them to do it. So for this, I had two tricks up my sleeve. First, the travelers had dealt with Augment raiders before. The reason we started the scenario off with them being in Marduk is we were just wrapping up the final parts of Marooned on Marduk, where the traveler's shuttle is shot down by Augment raiders and then raiders are chasing him through this ruined city. Second was Moto. Moto's backstory included a deep hatred of Augment raiders. They had murdered his family, and his hearing the call from the sheriff, desperate to get his daughter back, was just too much for Moto to refuse.
Yeah, guys, look, if you don't want to help me out with this, that's fine. But I gotta go back and rescue that little girl and murder me some raiders, and I'd appreciate some help.
Krista reminded them that they had to deliver the goods to Annis and James in 12 hours, but as long as they could make it to the drop-off in time, they could then rescue the townsfolk and be big damned heroes. And thus ends Act 1 of Mystery of BT-SHT 365. Overall, we did have a lot of fun with this adventure. The biggest hurdles that a game master is going to face while running it is making the initial reason for the travelers to go to the planet something that they would want to do. If they don't have a ship, that's really easy to do. They're getting free passage to Homestead. But if they have a ship, you're going to want to encourage them with some reason that they should go there, because that's an expensive journey. Next, bring in a little bit of foreshadowing for what happens on in the later acts. That way they might notice the other ship that's sitting at the starport, or notice Coraline while they're in the town. That way it doesn't feel kind of randomly tacked on once the events in Act 2 unfold. And finally, adjust the situation. That way the travelers want to do the rescue and save all the townspeople rather than trying to railroad them into that situation, because the rescue is the title of Act 2 of this scenario and the title of our next exciting episode.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of this series or some of our other videos like game reviews and how-tos, just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, travelers, you have a great day. The part that got me is if we were supposed to take the maglev train the 500 kilometers to get to that town, how in the hell were we supposed to leave the town once we had robbed the bank? Were we supposed to just sit at the station with all the stolen goods like idiots waiting for the train to arrive?